All right, let's dive right in, shall we? Today, we're heading straight into the world of Southeast Asian politics, focusing on this kind of intriguing relationship between Malaysia's PM Anwar Ibrahim and, well, the former Thai PM, Thaksin Shinawatra.
Yeah, it's really quite fascinating, isn't it? I mean, you have these two figures, charismatic, both pushing for reforms, but their paths have been, vastly different.
Yeah, for sure. And we're not just talking history here. We're looking at some recent news articles, actually, about a meeting they had on February 2nd this year, 2025. And here's the thing. Thaksin, he was ousted back in '06, but now he's suddenly back advising Malaysia on their Asean chairmanship this year. So it makes you wonder, why him? What's the real story behind their relationship? And what does this meeting tell us about, where Southeast Asia is headed?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, this wasn't just a friendly catch-up. No, this meeting, it signals some serious strategic alignment on some pretty big issues for the region. And get this, even former Singaporean Foreign Minister George Yeo was there, which makes you think this was more of a regional strategy session.
Okay, so let's dig into what we've gleaned from the sources.
Yeah.
Seems like they honed in on five key priorities, actually, for Malaysia's time as chair.
Yeah, you got it. First up, and it's a big one, the Myanmar crisis. ASEAN's been, struggling, to put it mildly, to find a solution. And it seems they're turning to Thaksin. He's got that experience. He's been known to engage with a lot of different players in Myanmar, even the military junta.
So you're saying he could be like a back channel trying to break the stalemate? That's a pretty delicate role.
It is. And it really shows how much Anwar seems to trust Thaksin's diplomatic skills, let's say. But, Thaksin, he's a bit of a lightning rod, right? His involvement could raise some eyebrows, maybe even complicate things further. It's a tough balancing act, for sure.
For sure. Okay, this next one really piqued my interest. Cryptocurrency. Apparently, they talked about making ASEAN, get this, a leading crypto hub. Imagine that. Southeast Asia at the forefront of the crypto world.
It's a smart move, really. You think about it, the region's got this young, tech-savvy population, right? And they're already ahead of the game when it comes to mobile payments and all that e-commerce stuff.
So they're building on what they're already good at.
Precisely. And they're not talking about just letting things run wild. No, they're talking about a balanced approach to regulation, something that encourages innovation, but also makes sure investors are protected. It's like a sandbox, where crypto startups can try things out, but with some safety measures in place.
Yeah, that makes sense. Attract investment, but don't let it turn into the Wild West. Okay, let's not forget about the peace process in southern Thailand. It's been going on for ages, right? And it seems like Anwar and Thaksin might have been discussing this even before this big meeting. Remember those photos of them meeting on a yacht in Phuket last year?
Oh, yeah. It seems they were laying the groundwork, you could say, for some potential peace talks. And Malaysia, they've got a vested interest in things being stable on their border, right? And who better to get advice from than someone who really understands Thai politics, like Thaksin? He's got those personal connections, too.
It's a complex issue, no doubt about it. But any progress towards peace would be huge for both countries.
Absolutely. Now, moving away from the more sensitive topics, they also got into some economic matters, talking about aligning their economic agendas, which, believe me, is no easy feat. And they explored some potential collaborations in the energy sector.
And that's where the bigger picture of ASEAN integration comes in, right? I mean, stronger economic ties between, let's say, Thailand and Malaysia. Well, that contributes to a more unified and competitive ASEAN as a whole.
You got it. They're not just thinking about themselves, they're thinking about how these initiatives can benefit the entire region. And it goes beyond just energy too. They even talked about boosting tourism between the two countries. Imagine a smooth transition from Thailand's Amazing Thailand campaign this year to Malaysia's Visit Malaysia year next year.
That's smart, taking advantage of that momentum.
Exactly. And finally, they discuss partnerships in those emerging technologies like digital infrastructure and green tech.
So they're really thinking about the future of the region long term.
Precisely. Investing in these sectors now, that could give ASEAN a real competitive edge in the global economy down the road.
Okay, so we've got these 5 key areas: the Myanmar crisis, cryptocurrency, the Southern Thailand peace process, economic integration, and then all those emerging tech partnerships. It's a lot. Ambitious, to say the least. But can they actually, can they pull it off?
That's the big question, isn't it? And it all comes down to this, somewhat controversial partnership between Anwar and Thaksin.
Right. Some folks praise Thaksin's experience and connections, but others are, well, they're pretty critical of his past. It's definitely stirred up a lot of debate.
It's the Thaksin paradox, I guess you could say. He's a polarizing figure, no doubt about it, but he's also undeniably influential. Malaysia seems willing to overlook the baggage, let's say, for his insights and those regional connections. But will it pay off?
That's what we'll be digging into next. Can this Anwar-Thaksin collaboration actually turn all this talk into, into concrete action? Stick with us.
Yeah, it's a risky move for Anwar, for sure, aligning himself so closely with Thaksin. But let's unpack these 5 priorities a little more, starting with that big one we talked about, the Myanmar crisis.
Yeah, I mean, ASEAN hasn't exactly been sitting on their hands, right? They've been trying to do something.
Yeah.
What's different about Anwar and Thaksin's approach? What did the sources actually say about their strategy?
Well, it seems like they're kind of moving away from that 5-point consensus that ASEAN's been relying on. And let's be honest, it hasn't really been all that effective. They're looking for something more proactive, and that's where Thaksin comes in. He's got those connections. He's known to have relationships with various stakeholders in Myanmar, from the military junta to even some of the ethnic armed groups.
So is this like back-channel diplomacy we were talking about? Those secret negotiations, it sounds kind of risky.
It does. And it shows a certain level of, trust between Anwar and Thaksin, right? Don't forget, Thaksin, he's got a history of brokering deals. Remember back in 2004, he actually helped facilitate a ceasefire between the military and Karen rebels. But whether he can, replicate that success in the current climate, well, that's a big question mark.
Okay, let's move on to something a little less heavy. Cryptocurrency. I got to say, the idea of ASEAN as a global crypto hub is it's pretty interesting. What would that even look like in reality?
Well, just think about it for a second. Southeast Asia has a rapidly growing digital economy, right? Young population, very tech savvy. And they've got that high rate of mobile phone use. They're already ahead of the curve when it comes to like mobile payments and all that e-commerce stuff.
So they're playing to their strengths.
Exactly. And they're not just talking about, letting anything go. They're discussing a balanced regulatory framework, something that encourages innovation but also protects investors. Kind of like a sandbox where crypto startups can experiment, but there are safeguards in place.
Makes sense. Attract the investment but keep things from getting out of control. Now, back to that southern Thailand peace process.
Yeah.
It seems like Anwar and Thaksin might have been working on this behind the scenes for a while.
Yeah, it wouldn't be surprising, honestly. I mean, this has been going on for decades. And Malaysia, being right there on the border, they've got a big stake in finding a resolution. And who better to ask for advice than someone like Thaksin? I mean, he knows Thai politics inside and out, and he's got those personal connections.
Okay, so let's say they do manage to get those peace talks back on track. What are the big challenges, the things that could derail the process?
Well, the biggest one, I think, is that deep-rooted distrust, between the Thai government and the separatist groups. Bridging that gap, that's going to take a lot of effort, a lot of goodwill on both sides.
And it's not just about getting them to the table, is it? They have to find solutions that actually address those underlying grievances.
Absolutely. The issues are, they're complex. You've got cultural identity, you've got economic inequality, you've got historical grievances. This is not something that's going to be solved overnight.
All right, let's switch gears to the economic side of things.
Yeah.
They talked about aligning their economic agendas, but what does that actually mean on the ground?
Well, it's about finding those areas where they can work together, create those win-win situations. Take energy, for example. Thailand wants to become a regional hub for renewable energy, and Malaysia is trying to diversify their energy sources and reduce their dependence on fossil fuels.
So there's room for collaboration there. Maybe Thailand could supply clean energy to Malaysia.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just energy, too. They talked about boosting tourism, maybe creating joint marketing campaigns, making it easier to travel between the two countries.
All about using each other's strengths and creating a more integrated regional economy. Now, last but not least, those partnerships in emerging technologies.
Yeah, because that's the future, right? They see the potential of digital infrastructure, green tech, all these cutting-edge innovations that could drive economic growth, create jobs, improve people's lives across the whole region.
But these are long-term investments, right?
Yeah.
How do they convince their governments and the private sector to to put up the money to commit those resources.
You're right. That's a valid point. It requires a change in thinking, moving away from short-term thinking to a more strategic, long-term approach. And it needs everyone on board, governments, businesses, the general public.
So are you optimistic? Do you think they can actually make this happen? Can they turn these ambitious goals into reality?
I'd say it's a mixed bag, really. They've got a bold vision, that's for sure, but there are a lot of challenges ahead.
Like what? What are some of the biggest hurdles they'll have to overcome?
Well, there's always that bureaucratic inertia. Things move slowly in Southeast Asia, even with the best of intentions.
And then there's the political reality, right? Both Anwar and Thaksin have their critics, people who will try to undermine their efforts.
Absolutely. And then there's that whole geopolitical backdrop. ASEAN is operating in a really complex, volatile region. You've got the U.S.-China rivalry playing out right there.
So how do they navigate all that?
It's a delicate balancing act, maintaining good relations with both those superpowers, but also making sure ASEAN's own interests and priorities are front and center.
It's a lot to juggle.
It is. But hey, that's politics, right?
Right.
It's the art of the possible. And if anyone can pull this off, it might just be this unlikely duo, Anwar and Thaksin.
Well, I'm definitely interested to see what happens. This is a really fascinating moment for Southeast Asia. It could be a turning point. Who knows? And for you, our listeners, we've really only just scratched the surface here. Yeah, it really shows you, just how complicated things are in the region. All these relationships, the rivalries. It's fascinating. But stepping back for a second, what does Thaksin being back on the regional stage, even if it's kind of indirectly, what does that mean for Thailand itself?
That's the million-dollar question, right? I mean, he's still a very, how do you say it? A very divisive figure back home.
Yeah.
Some people, they love him, for his policies, those populist policies. But others, well, they see him as corrupt, authoritarian,
So could this be like a calculated move on his part? Yeah. Is he testing the waters for a political comeback?
It's possible, yeah. I mean, by showing off his expertise, his influence, on the regional stage, he could be trying to kind of clean up his image, show the Thai people that he's still got something to offer.
So it's like this interplay between domestic politics and what's happening in the region, all tied up with personal ambition. It's a good reminder that politics are never simple, especially in Southeast Asia.
Absolutely. And it's a place where the past, it's always there, Think about it. Anwar and Thaksin, they were both seen as these reformist leaders back in the 90s. They were challenging the old guard, pushing for change.
And they were both victims of political, I guess you could say, maneuvering, right? Ousted from power. And it was pretty controversial at the time. And now, all these years later, they're back working together to shape the future of the region. It's like like a second act, a chance to rewrite the story.
And maybe, who knows, maybe those shared experiences, the setbacks, the wins, maybe that'll give them a different perspective on the challenges facing Southeast Asia today.
It's a compelling story, no doubt. But in the end, it's not about personalities, is it? It's about the people of Southeast Asia. Yeah. What does all this collaboration, what does it mean for them? For their lives, their jobs, their hopes for the future.
That's the question we always have to ask ourselves, right? Will this new era of cooperation, will it bring more prosperity, more stability, more opportunities, or will it just, strengthen the existing power structures, the inequalities? Will it actually benefit the people on the ground?
And those are questions for everyone, really, not just folks in Southeast Asia, but anyone who's interested in how this region is changing, how it's developing. As we continue to follow this story, we'll be watching closely to see how it affects everyday people.
Because that's what matters, right? The decisions made by those in power, they should serve the needs, the aspirations of the people.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, our listeners, with one final thought. We've explored the 5 key priorities, the potential benefits, and of course, the risks of this Anwar-Thaksin collaboration.
But the story's not over. Whether they succeed, whether they fail, it'll depend on so many things, many of which are out of their hands.
So stay engaged, stay informed, and keep asking those questions. The future of Southeast Asia, it's being shaped right now, and we all have a role to play in understanding how it's all unfolding.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back soon with more explorations into this fascinating world of current events. Until then, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep pushing for a better future for all.